Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This is another RHCSA practice session. In this session, I'm going to do a brief little overview/review of accessing remote systems using SSH in the Understand and Use Essential Tools part of the RHCSA exam objectives. So before I dive in, I want to remind you, if you enjoy the content of the video, make sure you click like, also subscribe to the channel and ring the bell when you do so you can be aware of when new content comes available. And as always with these practice session videos, I'm not intending for this to necessarily be authoritative information, but rather it's kind of my understanding of these concepts as I'm preparing for the exam, and I might show you some things you haven't considered before, or maybe um, go through some things in a way that you haven't thought of, and if so, maybe that'll be beneficial for you if you watching this are a holder of the RHCSA or anything, and have suggestions for folks that would watch this of different ways of doing things. By all means, leave a comment, as the point of these is to share and learn. So diving in, let me log into my VM here. Oh, there we go. And again, the concept here is just access remote systems using SSH. And the beauty of Linux operating system, SSH is built in by default. I know you can get an SSH client in Windows 10. I can't remember if it's installed by default yet or not, or if you have to go into the little features to add the OpenSSH client. By the way, in a Linux environment, it's ready to go already. So I'm going to open my terminal, and this is my GUI VM, and I have two non-GUI VMs. Let me ping them, make sure that I can access that. So rel8 practice 1.ejslab.com. Oh, misspelled rel. Let's try that again. Yep, I'm able to ping that. And let's make sure we can ping practice number 2. And we can. So SSH, this is a pretty easy thing to do. I'm going to show you how to do this both with password and passwordless authentication. First, with password authentication, there are a couple of ways of accessing this, and I'm going to access the practice 1 server first. And so the command for that will simply be SSH, whatever your username is. I'm not going to be accessing it as root. I access it as my just standard user, and then the host name or IP address. Since I have this in my DNS, I can use host name. So that would be rel8.practice or -practice1.com. And the first thing it's going to prompt me is whether or not I want to trust this, because it is giving a fingerprint of this, and I don't have anything configured on my in my GUI VM that says, yep, this particular SHA-256 fingerprint is the one for this server. So it's asking me, are you sure you want to continue? And I am 99% sure this is the exact same server. I doubt there's anything on my little LAN here that would be man in the middling my or would that be manning in the middle? I'm not quite sure. My connection here. So I'm going to say yes. It'll then ask me for my password, and I'm now logged in. If I were to do hostname, rel practice1, and IP address show, I think this is going to be 24. Is it 24? No, it's 20. So at this point, I have completed an SSH connection into this this server. So if you're managing, I would imagine multiple servers and such, you're not going to want to type in that password all the time. That'll get a bit annoying. So you can set up key-based authentication. And so what I mean by this is it's the idea of public-private key. You would have your private key stored on your machine. You give the public key to whatever other entity. When you try to connect, private key will match the public key, connection can happen. Now, of course, there's more to it than that. That's just a very high level kind of explanation of how that key-based authentication works. But to be able to set that up, first I'm going to type exit to get out of the connection. And host name, as you can see, I'm back on my practice GUI VM. So the command that we want for this is called SSH keygen. Now, there are different options you can add to this, but just going through the defaults, if you press enter, it's going to ask the file where you want to save. This is going to be your private key. And it's going to ask if you want a passphrase. If you want this to be super protected, you can give your key itself a passphrase, which probably wouldn't be a bad idea. For this demonstration, I'm not. I'm just going to keep that blank. Enter same passphrase again, which will be blank. And it has made your private key an ID underscore RSA, and it has made a public key for you, an ID underscore RSA dash pub. And if you want to, you can cat these files out so you can see what it looks like. So ID that will be .ssh, ID RSA.pub. There's our public key, and then the private key. There's our private key. So the question now becomes, how do we get clear? How do we get the public key onto our server? Well, the command for that would be SSH-copy ID -ID? Yeah, SSH-copy-ID. And here we're going to enter our credentials again, or rather we're going to tell it what username at what host that we want to connect to. So that'll be rel 8-practice1 ejslab.com. Now, this time it didn't warn me saying, hey, do you trust this fingerprint? We've already done that, and that added the fingerprint to your known host file. And I'll show you that in just a moment so you can check that. And what it's telling you that it's attempting to copy your public key to that server. You have to feed it your password. All right, it said it added the key, and so now to be able to sign in, we can just do SSH Eddie at that host name. And I don't need any credentials, or rather I don't need my password, and it's already there. Now, of course, if I had set a password on the private key for this, then I would have to enter the private key's password. So one of the things you'll often hear is that doing the SSH key is more secure than just having passwords, and that's right, because I'm going to go and see I'm on that rel practice server. Let me go into Etsy, then SSH. I think it's SSHD. Nope, SSH. There it is, SSHD config. So we're going to VI into SSHD config. I need to do that with sudo. Fat fingering my password tonight. All right, so this is the configuration file for the SSH service, SSHD config. And what we're looking for, first of all, you had under authentication, if you were to comment out or change yes to no permit root login, that would prevent someone from logging into your server via SSH using the root account. If this were a production server, especially if it's something that's that faces the public internet, I would definitely want to either change yes to no or comment that line out to make sure that we can't brute force your way in with root. The other thing that we're looking for is password authentication. So If I were to change this to no or comment it out, what that's going to do is prevent being able to log into the server via SSH with just a password. And so to demonstrate that, I'm going to comment this out, save and exit. We're going to restart the SSHD service. All right, now we're going to exit out, or actually before we do, we're going to make a new user. So user add Eddie2, do that with sudo. All right, I'm going to set the password for Eddie2. Oops, yeah, I'm fat fingering passwords tonight. There we go, and just to test, use the su command to log in as Eddie2-L for login for that. All right, so password's going to work. All right, so I've exited out. I'm back on my practice GUI. Now, if I were to SSH Eddie at my lab server, that logs in just fine. If I were to try to do the same with my other account, feed it the password. That's odd. I was not expecting that to log in. So who am I? Yep, I'm there. Let's go, while we're at it, let me su to root. That's not going to work. Su to Eddie. Yep, and now we'll sudo -i to root. There we go. Okay, so let's see if we can figure out what's going on here, because I was not expecting to be able to log in with a password on Eddie2. So first, let's go into our SSHD config. Maybe I made a mistake there. We've disabled. Perhaps it needs to be no instead of just, I'll bet that's what it is. All right. So we made that change. Let's restart SSHD. Exit our way out. Now we're back on the practice GUI. Let's try this again. Eddie2 at rel8 practice1.ejslab.com. There we go. Permission denied. And notice that it has dropped that before I really even get a chance to put in the password. Now if I were to do SSH Eddie at rel8 practice1.ejslab.com, that's going to work just fine. So the lesson learned, both for me and for you, if you're working on practicing this, is that to turn off the password authentication, apparently in SSHD config, we have to actually change that line from from yes to no. Just commenting it out is not going to be sufficient. Now, the thing I'm curious about, we can explore this real quick in this practice session, is the behavior for the root account. So let me, since we're in here, let us set the root password. All right, make sure that's going to work. Yes, okay. So now let us go back to our GUI, and we should be able to SSH in as root because we didn't make any change to that default. So let's try SSH root at a lab server. That makes sense because we have password authentication denied. So I'm sure some of you watching are going, yep, we knew that was going to fail, Eddie, because you have password authentication denied. And we knew that was going to fail, Eddie, because you misspelled rel. Well, since I'm just doing the screenshot, you can't see me kind of smiling and laughing at myself. All right, so sudo vi etc ssh hd.conf, or config rather. So now we're going to just comment out password authentication no. Let's see if that gives us the desired effect. And when you do this, you have to restart the SSHD service. All right, so now let's try our SSH root at rel8-practice 1.ejs lab.com. Okay, so now it's going to ask for the password, and we're in. So the thing that we're testing, go back into SSHD config, is whether or not just commenting out allowing permit root login, just commenting that out will give us the desired effect. So considering the behavior for the password authentication, I'm thinking the answer is no. It will not give us the desired effect, but let's see what happens. It's the beauty of a lab. You can do let's see what happens and not worry about breaking production. So save, system, CTL, restart, SSHD, exit. Okay, so I think that I'll be able to log in as root. So let's see what happens. Let's press up, make that a little bit easier. Ah, permission denied. Perhaps I just fat fingered the password. Let's try this again. Looks like that worked. So we can put this to the test here. Let me SSH back in as Eddie, vi etc ssh sshd config. Of course, I have to do that as sudo. So we know that uncommenting this is going to allow it, because that's how it was before. Let's change this to no and see if the behavior is the same. All right, so we'll try again as root. It looks like the behavior is the same. I'm going to make 100% sure I did not fat finger the password. I'll do it slower this time. And then just for giggles, let's feed it some nonsensical password and see if it gives us a different error, which I don't think it will. I think it'll just say permission denied. Yep. All right. So what we've discovered, or what I've discovered, I guess right, because we're all, you're watching this, along with me doing the experiment, is to prevent root to be able to SSH in. You can either uncomment that line or change it to no, but to prevent password for SSH, you have to actually explicitly have no in that configuration file. The last thing I did want to show you, I mentioned about the thumbprint before and where that's stored. If I were to ls-al, and SSH is going to be a hidden directory, you can see it there. If I were to go into SSH, and then there's the known host file, I'm going to cat that known host. You can see the thumbprint for the rel8practice1.ejslab.com and the IP address. That's where that's stored. The other thing I wanted to show you before I finish up here is we're going to cat the id rsa.pub. All right, and that ends Eddie at rel practice GUI, and it's what, B7ZU. If I were to SSH into that server, I'm sorry, practice1.ejslab.com, and if I were to go into the SSH directory and see authorized keys, let me cat that. Here, notice that we have our key. Oops, did not do what I expected it to do. This key here appears to be the same as this key here. So that's where it's checking to make sure that the key that we're trying to use to authenticate is authorized. And so going back to the original point, the reason why this is a bit more secure than your password authentication is it is highly unlikely that you're going to be sharing your private key with anyone. And so therefore, where it's possible you can brute force that password, is highly unlikely that you would be able to somehow brute force the private key. So for this session of just practicing accessing systems via SSH and looking at a couple of the options to be able to do that, I believe this pretty much covers it. Feel free to leave comments on things I haven't considered here, or ask questions. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. As always, thank you for taking the time to watch. Remember, if you enjoyed the content, click like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you the next time.